DLSS 4.5 is a complex beast and actually represents two presets. Preset M, targeting performance mode, which I covered in my last video, and preset L, which is heavier on the GPU and targets more aggressive ultra performance mode scaling. After my last video, a lot of people in the audience and in the comments wanted to know about this preset L, and in today's video on Digital Foundry, I will shine a spotlight on it. I'll compare its image quality characteristics to preset M. I'll examine it at lower resolutions like 1440p, as you can see here in the B-roll running in the background. I will also answer the question as to whether or not older RTX GPUs like the RTX 3070 ought to be using this ultra performance mode preset L. All that and a few surprises along the way, so let's get right into it. As mentioned in my intro here, preset L is designed around DLSS's ultra performance mode, while preset M has been designed around performance mode. At 4K, for example, performance mode scales up from 1080p internally for 1/4 the total of the output pixels. Ultra performance mode scales up from 720p at 4K, so 1/9 of the total output pixels. Ultra performance mode DLSS thus has a much harder job to make good image quality since it has dramatically fewer input pixels. And in the past, this was covered by preset F in the CNN model, and this preset F did not really have a direct descendant in the transformer model until now with preset L. So we've got preset M and L, and the reason why they target certain scaling modes is because they have a certain cost associated with them. On an RTX 3070, preset M, which Nvidia recommends for performance mode scaling, already took 3.39 milliseconds longer to render than preset K at 4K. So it's 18% slower than the previous state-of-the-art preset K. And preset K was already more expensive, notably so, than the previous state-of-the-art preset E CNN model on a GPU like the RTX 3070 here. Preset L is even heavier than anything else before it, with it being 6.25 milliseconds longer per frame than the previous preset K at that same 1080p to 4K upscale. That makes it 27% slower on average in this benchmark than the previous DLSS 4 transformer model at the same ISO settings. Since preset L is significantly heavier, especially on older RTX cards like this Ampere one or Turing architecture, Nvidia wants to recommend using the newer models for lower scaling modes like ultra performance mode for L and performance mode for M. The reason why they do that is because they want the lower input resolution to balance out the greater expended frame time cost of running the model itself. As we can see here, using ultra performance mode 4K in yellow with preset L ends up being faster than the other transformer models in performance mode 4K. The lower input res is going to offset increased cost. This is the case, and it is Nvidia's recommendation, but still, you as a user can actually use preset L or M for any DLSS mode if you use the Envy app. You can switch it there to run on any mode you want. The question then is, as a user, should you be using this heavier to run preset L instead of preset M? Let's look at that by comparing preset M to L in the deficient areas I highlighted in my last video at performance mode scaling. Let's start with thin particle rendering. While on average, preset M was better than preset K here, particles would still not present as ideally as one wished, as we can see in Death Stranding. Preset M would still have less full rain particles than super sampling. And looking at Sam's backpack, there was no sign of raindrops on it, like we see in the super sampled image. Looking at preset L here in comparison to those two models, the reproduction of particles in the air and the small drops on the backpack are actually much the same. So in this aspect, preset M and L are very similar. Another area where preset M improved over K was ghosting on thin wire elements, as seen in Forza Horizon 5. Though, in the comparison to super sampling, of course, these elements still have aliasing and lines are not as complete as they arguably could be. Bringing in preset L into the mix here for comparison, we can see a very similar reproduction of aliasing and of detail as in preset M. So this area is not much improved with preset L. One area where preset M had some issues was showing occasional added in aliasing and fizzle on vegetation. In titles like Horizon Forbidden West, we could see that vegetation had more aliasing and movement, where pixels popped in and out of existence, making the entire image in such regions of vegetation look less stable. If we compare here to preset L, we can see different behavior. As we can see, these distant bushes here that I've highlighted, preset L no longer has the ever-changing aliasing per frame as found found in preset M. So the vegetation here looks much more stable with no more pixel popping as it bobs up and down in the wind. In Horizon Forbidden West, this vegetation fizzle, as seen with preset M, that was kind of a regression over preset K, has been eliminated with preset L. In Silent Hill 2, I noted a similar situation. Vegetation swaying back and forth in the wind here with preset M has noticeable ever-changing edge pixel color values. It wasn't ghosting like K before it, but it had the appearance of aliasing and flicker in motion in spite of being crisper. Preset L, when added into the comparison mix, holds the silhouettes well, much like preset M does without any ghosting, but it also anti-aliases edges better and prevents that kind of fizzle aliased look. There's less flicker in the image altogether versus preset M in preset L. You can see this very well on the thin branches of the trees or the inner parts of the trees where many leaves are layered over one another. There's just less flicker there. That's pretty great. One last area I wanted to check was in regard to ray tracing resolve. Preset M commonly increased the amount of noise in ray traced reflections and in some aspects of ray traced lighting versus the previous state-of-the-art preset K. As far as I can tell, preset L at those same internal resolutions and output resolutions still has that exact same behavior in the titles that I tested in my previous video. So preset M will not meaningfully aid this issue. But while testing out this behavior in general, I have made an interesting discovery. Basically what I found out is that if you turn off an in-game denoiser, preset M or preset L actually produce better looking visuals. Like we can see here in Crysis 3. When I turn off the in-game denoiser using a console command, we can see that there's less ray tracing noise in the reflection with that denoiser turned off. So on the right here, we're seeing less active boiling in the ray traced reflection on the floor surface since now the denoiser is off there. We're getting better denoising without the game's denoiser on. I tested the same thing in Silent Hill 2, where there's even more stark behavior. As I showed in my last video, preset M increases ray tracing noise in the reflections in that game versus preset K. Well, I turned off the denoiser using Unreal Unlocker and console commands, and we can see now that preset M, or L for that matter, will deliver a much better ray tracing resolve with the in-game denoiser off. You get clearer, mirror-like reflections, and the rough area on the road actually resolves the surface normal properly, all with less noise than preset K or M, even though the denoiser has been turned off. I asked behind the scenes to a third-party developer using DLSS themselves, and it would appear that preset L or M have some poor interplay with ray tracing effects denoising that is done at a lower resolution before DLSS upscales it. And they mentioned, as we can see in Silent Hill 2 here, that turning off the game's denoising and leaving a raw image without any patterning in it can lead to superior ray tracing visuals. I think it's plain enough to see here in the example I have in Silent Hill 2. This means on one hand that DLSS can be a better denoiser than some game standard denoisers, which is kind of funny, but on the other hand it means that DLSS preset M and L have issues overlaid after stock denoising. I think this is problematic as we want image reconstruction to be as plug and play as possible and to have good legacy support. Yes, we would probably prefer games offering things like DLSS ray reconstruction, but that shouldn't be expected, nor should it be expected that developers should rejig a game post-release to be better set up for preset M and L. Rather, it should be the case that preset M or L work with denoising as is without producing worse results than previous models. It'd be best if there was no special case scenarios, basically. Altogether in total, I would say that preset L is much the same as preset M, but it does handle the noise and aliasing better on vegetation. And all the tests that I did for this have been done at ISO settings and at 4K and in performance mode, just to see which preset has noticeably superior characteristics. In reality though, this preset L is targeting ultra performance mode, and not everyone is going to have a 4K monitor, especially with older hardware. So how does this preset L scale at a 9x upscaling factor of ultra performance mode? And how does it scale at lower resolutions like 1440p? Well, let's find out. Based on testing at 4K Ultra Performance mode, preset L has much the same macro image quality characteristics as it does in the performance mode testing I showcased in the earlier section of this video and in my previous video on preset M. The main difference between Ultra Performance mode and Performance mode at 4K lie in the amount of detail resolved and how competent edge anti-aliasing is at any given moment. Watching footage from Ratchet and Clank here, with lots of motion, you should be able to see how both feeds left and right side here are very comparable, although on the left with Ultra Performance mode, we're seeing a 9x scale versus a 4x on the right. Pausing the footage though shows core main differences. Inner surface detail is flatter, with less normal mapped texture detail being visible. Also, if you look on the edges of thin elements, you will often see that lines are not completed there to the same level of crispness, or edge anti-aliasing is not as complete as one finds in the performance mode on the right. A good example are these thin headphone cables here, missing in the Ultra Performance mode while there in the Performance mode. On a general level, preset L is also softer in Ultra Performance mode than it is in the Performance mode. This is a general trend across many games in my testing, and I am not finding evidence of some sort of added-in sharpening filter I've read about online. The lower the DLSS preset and the more aggressive scaling level means that the image is softer as one goes down. This is the case in nearly all games I tested and is consistent with the previous DLSS behavior in previous DLSS models. One outlier case is found in Horizon Forbidden West. This game appears to have a forced sharpening pre-upscaling that increases the amount of non-user tweakable sharpening the higher the upscaling value is as set by the user. So that means the lower res it is, the more ringing artifacts you get. This doesn't happen in any other game I tested, and since it does happen here, I will avoid using this game for IQ comparisons in the future as it kind of muddies the waters. The general gist of Ultra Performance mode for preset L, and especially at 4K, is that it is excellent for the core IQ aspects that preset L or M did rather well in the performance mode that I've highlighted in this video and the last. Preset L in Ultra Performance mode would actually be highly recommendable nearly across the board if it did not have issues with ray tracing. Preset L's issues with ray tracing noise are then increased and heightened when the internal resolution is 1/9 of the output resolution, making for some lopsided visuals. Texture detail and edges can look surprisingly excellent in spite of that internal resolution where you scarcely could believe it is 720p, but then you would see some aspect of that image that is largely affected by ray tracing, like a metallic or reflective surface, and the illusion comes crashing down as you can start seeing that internal resolution very easily, and of course extensive boiling. While Ultra Performance mode acquits itself generally well outside of ray tracing at 4K, I would say it is far less successful at 1440p. For one, you have that ray tracing noise issue that I've talked about so many times. At 1440p here in Control, the noise from preset L and the internal resolution of ray tracing are incredibly obvious and I would say extremely distracting. These are only cleaned up at higher scaling levels, and thus this absolutely defeats the point of using Ultra Performance mode as a way to cover up the burden of GPU performance induced by preset L's heavier cost. Another issue with Ultra Performance mode at 1440p is that the internal resolution is perhaps just far too low, being around 480p, the widescreen version of that resolution that most OG Xbox games ran at. At this internal resolution, a number of issues crop up that higher internal resolutions with DLSS just don't have. Particle ghosting, for example. Particles can easily be subpixel sized, and when this res is so low, they start ghosting in a way that doesn't seem to happen on higher modes. This applies to actually a number of subpixel details. You can start seeing ghosting there that higher pixel densities do not have, like the power lines in Forza Horizon 5 at 1440p Ultra Performance mode, which at this lower res showcase ghosting that they do not have at higher resolutions, and that formed a core part of the benefits of using preset M or L. But perhaps the biggest issue with Ultra Performance mode at 1440p, even with preset L's high quality upscaling, is that most games are just not designed around this resolution and upscaling factor, and there are a surprising amount of oversights or compatibility issues that crop up when using this level of scaling. Take Ratchet and Clank. That game's ray traced ambient occlusion absolutely breaks when this scaling level is used, causing super bizarre ghosting, outlines, stripes, flashing, and more. In a game like Control, there are a number of breaking moments, like strange lines that follow the camera on the ground when using the scaling level and resolution. In a game like Forza Horizon 5, that I've been showing off in this video, everything can look pretty sweet and surprisingly awesome until you get near some body of water that you drive through or when it rains. All of a sudden, your car's surface detail has big flashing and ever-changing speckles on it, something that really wouldn't happen at a lower scaling level or at a higher internal res. Or even more humorous perhaps was how the game's dynamically tessellated deforming surfaces such as sand deform based upon the pixel size of input resolution and not output resolution. So as you drive along the sand, you can see it boiling and flipping out as you get closer to it. Ideally, this would not happen if every aspect of a game's engine parameters were set to scale with output versus input resolution, but that cannot be expected across the board for all games. And just cursory play of some of the key titles I've highlighted in this video show how there can be very distracting issues with ultra performance mode at 1440p, in spite of it being pretty good looking in other aspects of image quality. This is a shame, of course, as issues like this and issues with ray tracing at this resolution make it rather unusable even for older GPUs like the RTX 3070, as with a GPU like that, its 8GB of VRAM are usually going to be limiting its res to an output resolution like this. And generally those games that are heavy enough to warrant such a level of upscaling like this are using ray tracing. So those use cases that make the most sense to use more aggressive upscaling like ultra performance mode with preset L actually are not great fits due to the issues that preset L has and due to the issues that lower input resolutions have. At 4K though, ultra performance mode can look great minus those titles where you see a lot of ray tracing in use. Coming to the end of this video, it is clear to see that preset L has advantages over preset M in regards to image stability on things like vegetation, though it does not do much to aid preset M's largest weakness in ray tracing noise, which curiously appears to be caused by some interaction with game standard denoisers being on at the input resolution. DLSS produces superior results when these denoisers are turned off. Preset L has turned out to be nice for a 4K resolution output at ultra performance mode even on modern RTX GPUs, but it becomes less recommendable the older the GPU is and the lower the output resolution is, where many games showcase issues that make it arguably a non-starter. Still, there is nothing wrong with trying it out yourself if you want to, but if I were you, I would attempt lower scaling factors like performance or balanced mode with a cheaper model, such as K or M. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell, help on Patreon, follow on Blue Sky, and as always, this is Alex, bidding you farewell und auf Wiedersehen.
New Horizon Wave Station here at the festival. Now look, I'm biased, but I think synthwave is the coolest microgenre of music around.